Hello there, my name is Ismail, and so we're continuing with our training series, creating a simple game in Unreal Engine using free software, that is Blender and Unreal Engine. So we left off having imported our mesh into from Blender to Unreal, and also set up our materials that are going to be used by our mesh. I can see it's very simple setup here. We just got a color, a vector color here, just a simple solid color, and then multiplied the ambient occlusion we baked from Blender, and with this to get this kind of look. You will see that on the edges they appear a bit darker, so that's what you should be able to see. If I go to this blueprint here, viewport, you can see how the corners there, or at the edges, is a bit dark there. That's because of the ambient occlusion we baked. So let's continue and start working on the blueprint. So as I said in the last video, a blueprint is just a template with a set of instructions telling Unreal what to do when a game starts, or when a user presses a key on their keyboard, or just inputs any instructions to the game, and other things, not just limited to that. So let's go on. Let me maybe just delete this blueprint so that I can start from scratch, just to show you the process again. So I'll just delete this again, force delete. Okay, so to create a new blueprint, just right click in this content browser, and I should find a few different options here. The one you want to click on is the class blueprint. When you click on that, you will have a list of different classes you can create. There are also more classes if you click on this drop down list, but the ones we're going to be looking at for this beginner tutorial is just going to be a few of these listed here. So an actor is just an object inside your game that is going to interact with any other object, and I also have a pawn. This is just an actor that you are going to control using your inputs, maybe a keyboard, mouse, or whatever you're using, a touch device. Or a character is just a more advanced pawn that also comes in with the different classes. This is a beginner series, so I'm not going to look at that. Let's just go with the pawn. Create that. So I'll just call this BP play start. So if you double click on it, it will open up the blueprint, and a blueprint, as I said, is a set of instructions to tell the program or Unreal what to do when a game starts, or when a user inputs any instructions. That can be via a keyboard or a mouse or a touch screen or a mobile phone, whatever you're using for this. But any blueprint will need a set of components to take in the instructions that the user is going to use. The user is going to pass to the game. So say we want to have the user control our jet fighter, so that is flying around in this area. So we, under the components here in your blueprint, click on that to add a static mesh. So this is going to be our object. So if you search here, static mesh, and see, it will add a placeholder for you to insert the mesh. So after that, you can just select that here. Make sure you have it selected, and under the details here, it will give you the option to select what mesh you want to be used in your blueprint. So you can either search it directly here, or just select it from right here. So this is the flying jet we want to use, and then click on this arrow for it to be imported into your blueprint. A faster way to do this is, let's first delete this. You can just drag the component directly into your component area, and I should have it imported as well. So the good thing about this is that it also comes with the naming, so you don't have to rename it as well. So yeah, this is what we have, and you can use the same navigations that you're using in your 3D view here. So if you hold down Alt and then drag with your left mouse button, you can orbit around your scene, and if you hold down your middle mouse, you can pan around your scene, and if you hold down Alt and then right click, hold down your right mouse button, you can zoom in and out. So if you move your view area away from the object, make sure you can select the object and then hit F. Hit F. I guess it doesn't work. I think it works in this view area. So let's drop this here, move, and hit F. You can see it centers, but I guess it doesn't work in the blueprint. That's okay. We can just go back to the viewport and it will center a view. So this is what we have, and we can drag it. Not the mesh, but the blueprint here. You can see it's denoted by this pawn icon, so we can drag it into our 3D view. And let's center this. As you can see, we have our jet. So let's give it a forward movement and see how that goes. So let's open up the blueprint. And as I said, it's just a template of instructions to give Unreal what to do. So those set of instructions come in as functions. Let me make sure everything is good here. That's this. Okay, let me put this here. So so the instructions come in as in a form of functions, and you have a lot of functions in Unreal. And the good thing about this is that using the blueprint system in Unreal is that you don't really have to code anything. You can do everything you want using blueprints. So right away, if you we started out in the viewport here, but you can see we have a few different panels here. We have the construction script and we have the event graph. So we're going to be doing most of our work here in the event graph. We won't touch this because this is a basic tutorial, and I don't think we'll need anything. We will need to do anything right here. So you can see this comes in with a few instructions here, with a few functions. You can see on event begin play, on event begin overlap, and event tick. So event begin play is when you hit play on your when you start playing the game. This event or function will kick off, and every instructions that follow that event or that are linked to that event can be executed on event overlap, on actor overlap. So if you have any other object in your scene that your actor can collide with or overlap, when the actor overlaps that, then all the functions that are linked to this event can also start firing. So event tick is just a way to keep track of the amount of time. It's just a way of counting the frame. It's like a playback button, like something you see in Blender. So if we open up in Blender, maybe I can show you something equivalent to that. Let's give it a moment. So it's the equivalent of hitting play here and getting this playback. So this event just kicks off calculating every second when you have this when the game starts playing. So let's see what we can do here. We're not going to use this event overlap, so I'll just select it and then delete by hitting delete on my keyboard. Let's begin with this event tick, which will just give us something which will just fire up a function or whatever instructions we give it every second whenever the game is playing. So let's do something. Let's move this forward, and the way you can do that is we can right click on, you can drag this to get this node here, and if you drag this node, you'll get this link here, and it will also open up any functions that or any events that can be executed from this event tick. So you can set a few instructions here. So let's try and find let's add actor local offset, and this will offset the position of this actor in whatever direction we give it here. So if we just hit play right now, nothing will really happen. So let's stop this, and want to show you something. So let me first close this for a second. If you hit play, you can see we get into this view, which is the default view of Unreal. And if you move your cursor around, or you can use your forward, which is W, A, and D, and S to move around your world. But we want to be controlling this fighter instead of controlling our view here. But that requires a few steps that I don't think we should, that I don't think I have time to cover in this section. So what I'm going to do, when I'm simulating this, there's a way to simulate outside this view area, and the way you do that is, let's open up our blueprint. Under play here, you can switch this from play to simulate, and that will simulate the view that you're looking at. So if I'm looking at it this way, you can see that it will simulate the game in that view area. You can also see that what is going on here. So Unreal is good enough to show you what is happening in your view areas and what functions are being fired depending on what you have, what instructions you have set up. Because we have this, let me stop this. Because we have this event tick, it's firing up every second or every tick we have for the frame. And if we disable this, if you just hold down Alt and then click on this node, it will just disconnect that. And if we hit play, you can see because we have nothing connected, and nothing will also execute. So if we say we have this event begin play and have that connected instead of this here, and now click on that, make sure you click simulate, you can see that that will start showing us the functions that have been executed. And you can see that this stops after a few seconds because it's an event executed on begin play, not continuously. The event tick is just calculated every tick of the game, so every second of the game. That's why you see that when we have this connected, it plays continuously because the game continues running. And maybe we can keep them connected so that you can see how the difference we have here. So if I play this, make sure that I'm simulating, you can see this one will stop, but this one will go on continuously because this is just executing once, and this one is executing for every delta second we have. But currently it's not doing anything, but because what we're doing is just telling this function we have here to execute on begin play and on event tick, but we're not giving it anything to do. So we are keeping the delta position to 0, 0 and everything there. So delta location is just the location of the actor here. So if we change this maybe to 10, let's see how that works out. You can see this will just fire up, and I can so that went up because our Z direction is upward. If you select this, you can see Z is indicated by this blue arrow. So because we have entered a 10 here as a value for this, it is moving the actor by this delta location. So, and it's doing this for every tick because we also have this entered. So if we disconnect this and first connect this only and hit and simulate, make sure I'm simulating correctly. So you see, if you see that, it just went up a few values and it stopped there. So if let's do this for, it's 100. You can see it just moves it up a few meters. 100, just 100 meters once because it's executing only once at the beginning of gameplay. So if we switch this out, make sure you stop when you're trying to play this to change things here. But if we switch this out to event tick, let's also disable this, you just hold on Alt and then click on that execute node. So if we change this to this tick event and hit play, you can see that because this is simulating every second, and the function we are having here is add actor location. Local offset is adding whatever value we have here to the location of the actor, and so if it's executing this for every second, it means that the first second it will move this by 100. I don't know what values are these, maybe meters or something. So it will move this 100 meters, and then another second it will get the location of the current location of the actor, and then add another 100 seconds, and then another 100 seconds. That's why you see it's flying away from us. So let's change this to 1 so that we can easily see what is going on. Also, let me make sure that I'm simulating so that we can see this event. Okay, it's not executing, it's not showing those arrows, but you can see what's going on here. It's just doing that, moving that, but that's not the direction we want our ship to go. I want it to go forward, so we can change this, and we know that the location, the axis we want is the x-axis, which is indicated by this red arrow. So instead of using Z, we can change this to the x-axis here. Let's use 1 again, and then play again. You can see this is going forward, but this is doing it automatically and continuously going on. What we want to use is a key press. Say when we hit W on the keyboard, this should move whatever distance we are putting in here. So let's delete these events here and find a key press event. So let's just hit W on your keyboard, right click and then hit W, scroll down until you find that. Make sure that let me see, W key. Yeah, so if you just write W key, you should also find it like that. So it's also an event, and it also gives you this executable inputs or outputs. So if we drag this to this, we can execute whatever we have, instructions we have on this side on key press. So let's play this and see. Okay. So the reason it's not working is that because we're using simulate, it's not. This is no longer our actor. This is not our actor anymore. So we need. I think this is going to be more complete. So I didn't want to go into creating a different blueprint, but in order to control this, object, we need to create another blueprint that we are going to use as our game mode. Let me first change this to just let me see viewport. You can see all the controls we have here are being used for our camera, not our ship. So I want to switch that so that it's our ship that uses this. We need to create a new blueprint, which is just a game mode blueprint to override the instructions that are being used by this, that are creating these movements, so that all our movements are tied to our ship instead of the camera. So let's do that, and yeah. So right click in your view area, click on blueprint, and the type of the class we want to do, we want to make this time is a game mode blueprint. So let's call this play. Let's call this play. Simple like that, and then double click to enter the blueprint. You can see under the details here, you should find the classes, and under the pawn class, remember we created our pawn class, which is the jet. So we need to set that as our pawn class for this. So let's go under classes and then default class, and then search for the class we just made, which was play start. Is it? Is this here? Play start, I think. BP play start because it's our pawn class, and that's what we want to use for that. So that's enough for this. So we can compile. Compile is basically like saving your instructions or making sure that they have been baked into into Unreal. So after that, you can also save, and you also need to save the project itself. So make sure you do that. And we have our new game mode blueprint. So if we play back right now, you can see it's still using the old blueprint, not the one we have just made, and that's because we created the game mode, but we haven't set it as our default game mode or the game mode we want to use in our gameplay. So for that, we can go under world settings, and I think under let's see, yeah, under game mode. If you go to world settings, if you don't have that, you can go under edit. I think it's, let's see, yeah, under window, world settings, and you will find the settings there. So we need to override the game mode override here. So change that to play, and save, and let's play. So you can see that I don't know if you can see that, but you see the front of the ship there, and now our keys are no longer working. But if you look closely, if I hit W, you can see how the ship is moving forward. Very small steps. So we can go back to the blueprint and increase the delta location. So let's say 10, so that the movement is easier to see. And then play this again and make sure I'm stopping this. You can see how the movement is now more incremented. So the problem is that we're only seeing the tip of the ship, and that's because since we don't have any camera in our blueprint, Unreal is just using any camera it wants. So let's add a camera here. So just add component, click on add component, and then search for camera. And we're not going to do anything fancy. Let's just add that and push it back a bit. Compile, and then let's play. Just need to minimize this. So you can see now we are seeing the camera. So I think the reason why we are seeing this two of our blueprints is because we have this that we dragged in, and in our game mode we also set this as our pawn class. So let's delete this, hit play, and you can see now we don't have the duplicate anymore. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but sorry if I explained that, if I made it clear there. But what we did earlier, we dragged in the blueprint. So when we hit play, we are seeing the blueprint we just dragged in. But we remember also when we are setting up our game mode, we set up our default pawn class that is being spawned in by our blueprint. So that is why we have two elements here that are exactly the same, but only controlling one. So if after setting up your game mode and making sure that the pawn class is set, your pawn class that you want to use is set up as the default pawn class for your game mode. Let me go back to the details. As you can see here, in our we need to double click this in our classes, and game mode default pawn class, you can see we have it there. So yeah, after you do that, just delete the one you dragged in, and yeah, we can hit play. You can see now when you hit forward, you can see how that goes in front. It goes forward. But the problem is that when you release your keyboard, so when you release the key press, it stops moving, and we want it to move continuously. So there are other ways to there are two different ways to accept user input. And if you go under I think edit, project settings. Just give it a moment. Okay, and under input, we have under bindings we have action mapping and axis mapping. So what we have been doing right now is using action mapping, and this is just when you press a key once, so it calculates 3, I think, instances when you have the key pressed, when you release, and when the key is not pressed at all. That is action mapping, and it's what you have access to when you just add a key directly like this, because as you can see we have key pressed and key released. Those are the two states that is being accepted. But we also have let's see under file, under edit, project settings, input. We also have axis mapping, and this is when you hold down the key, it will give Unreal instructions to set a value within -1 and +1. So that is -1, then you move from -1 to 0, and then to +1. So if you click on this, you can add a new axis mapping, and you can set the name you want to give it. So I'll just call this forward movement. Remember the name you use here, because we're going to be using it in our blueprint. So under that you can select the key you want to use. So I will again use W. So select that, and you can see the scale is just telling Unreal if you have pressed the button, or if you have not pressed the button. So 1 is for when you have the key pressed, and 0 is when you're not pressing the key. You also have inputs like if say you're using a mouse or a joystick, or a joystick. So if you're using a mouse and move your mouse on the x-axis, say if you move it far this side, Unreal can assign that movement a range of values from -1 to 1. So if you move it far to the right, it can assign that value, that movement, a value of 1. So if it's way at the end of your right, it can assign it a value of 1, and if you move it way to the left, it can assign it a value of -1, and in between here you will have a range of values from -1, 0 to +1, and this is what you're having here. So because on the keyboard we don't have that ability to push the key way in or just a little bit, we use other keys. So we can just assume that S key, let's see, just search for, just type in S and scroll down until we find the S key. So we can just assume that if we press W, we are moving the mouse way up to assign a value of +1, and if we hit S, we are moving the mouse backward to assign a value of -1. So we need to do this for that as well. So -1, and yeah, I think that will be enough for this. So after that you can just close it. Those values will be saved, and also make sure you save your project so that everything is saved. And now we can go into the blueprint. So we can go to the BP start blueprint and remove this. So we need to access those inputs, and the way you do that, you just right click and then search for the name you added in. So I think it was called forward, I can't remember, forward movement. So there are two events here. There are two inputs we are getting here. We have events and we have values. What we want to go for is these events. So click on that and it will give you this event here. And if we connect this directly to our axis, to our allocation event here, and compile, hit play, and see this is just going off forever. So let's close this. and it's not waiting for us to give any instructions because by default I think it outputs a value of 1, so which means that the key is being pressed. So we need to counteract that by using this axis value. So this axis value is the axis you added in here. So if we go edit, project settings, input, so the axis value is this value here, so -1 and 1. So when we give this, so if we say let's multiply this, so if you hit this I don't know how it's called, but this multiply icon, sorry, key, you can multiply different values, and there are different types of values in Unreal, like in any other programming language. There are floats, there are integers, there are strings. So floats are simply numbers that can have a point. So 0.1 is a float, but 1 is an integer because it doesn't have any decimal points. So if you see a value that has this blue icon, it means that is a float. So if you want to multiply it by, say, get this guy. So if you want to multiply this by, say, another value, you need to multiply it by a float, by another float. So we can just drag this and then hit the multiply icon, key, to get. And since we want to multiply a float by a float, since this is a float, we can add that there and multiply this by 2 and connect this to. We want the x-axis, but if we connect this directly, we are not sure what axis we are connecting to because there's only one input. So what we need to do is break this into different axes, so we can right click and then split struct pin. So this will split the different values, and since we want the x-axis, we can connect this directly like that and then compile, save, and let's hit play. See, nothing is working right now, so we just need to hit the forward movement, and you can see it's going forward. And now if we hit the S, it's going backwards. How it's doing that, it's getting the axis value, which is either a -1 or 1, depending on what key you're pressing. And since we set up W as 1, when we hit 1, it's just multiplying that value with these two to get the delta position, the delta location for this. And remember, it's adding this every time this key is pressed. So that's why you see we have any movement. So if you want this to be a higher value, we just make it. If you want this to go faster, we just increase that value and go forward like that. And again, if I should, let me explain this a bit again. So without this multiplication, if we connect this directly and hit play, it's just moving forward by 1 value, and if we hit S, it's moving backwards by 1 value, as it is the value we set in the inputs. But if you want to get that moving faster, then you do what we did there by multiplying it with a float. And yeah, so let me answer this guy, and I think we have covered enough here. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.